Next, we have Sam Elkin, who is going to talk to us about Detachable Penis, a queer legal saga. I cannot wait. Sam, take it away.
Hi everyone, great to be with you this afternoon. It's a real pleasure to talk to your group. I do feel a bit intimidated because I'm not an academic. I'm a writer and a community lawyer. So yes, my presentation is going to be rather informal and perhaps less theoretical than some of the other ones. So I put out this book earlier this year, Detachable Penis, a queer legal saga. I don't know if you can see that through my blur. This is the Canadian edition, and there's an Australian edition that came out with Upswell. Um, so the book is about my experiences working at the LGBTIQ legal service, which was down here in Naarm in St Kilda. For Sydney folks, it's a pretty similar service to the Inner City Legal Centre in King's Cross. We do similar sort of stuff, so same diff really. Um, I was also transitioning when I started in this job. So at the beginning of 2017, I started medically affirming my gender. So the book basically starts with me being 1 week into taking testosterone and my first day on the job. And it basically charts my progression through the job, and it goes through um, personal kind of milestones in my life, such as going to transgender speech pathology sessions and having chest surgery and things like that. But it also charts a lot of the political experiences and the political context of that period. So just to situate the book in time, basically we got funding for this LGBTIQ legal service pretty much as a direct result of the marriage equality campaign. There was a lot of queer funding available after the kind of plebiscite. I think a lot of people in positions of power and influence felt pretty guilty about the emotional toll that the entirely unnecessary kind of non-binding postal survey had on the community. So it was a good time to pitch projects like this. And basically, my job was helping LGBTIQA plus people with any legal issue that they presented with over a couple of years in order to demonstrate like an evidence base for the fact that LGBTIQA plus people might prefer a specialist service, and that we have some specialist legal needs around things like discrimination, access to healthcare, um, and particular kind of nuanced things like dealing with the police and misidentification of the um, the victim and offender in family violence matters and things like that. So, in reviewing this conference and the topic being queer rage, I thought I would talk about some of the aspects of my book that relate to kind of rage or feelings of anger. Because, yeah, I've kind of written the book in a, what I hope is a kind of like a dry, laconic, witty way. Whether or not I achieve that is a matter for the reader. Um, but yeah, I kind of didn't write it with anger in mind. I think that this experience that I had kind of ended in me feeling burnout, and so I felt quite tired. So, yeah, looking back on this period, that's sort of a feeling that came to mind a lot. But when I look back at this book from the kind of lens of queer rage, there is a lot of queer rage in this book. Um, I talk a lot about the birth certificate law reform campaign that was happening in at the time, and I know Sydney and other places have gone through similar things where we're trying to push progressive policies so that we can change our birth certificates without having to necessarily change our body parts. And I wanted to talk about the way in which the Victorian government, I felt, was kind of like pinkwashing itself in a way with progressive LGBTIQA plus policies on the one hand, but having quite a conservative law and order approach on the other hand. And that was really affecting members of the trans and gender diverse community who were in prison, many of whom I ended up representing. So um, I felt really frustrated, often getting sort of wheeled out for, Wear It Purple Day or Ida Hobbit Day or whatever it was, to be this sort of symbol of the justice system being more progressive now because, a transgender lawyer can exist and live in the world and so on, when at the same time, trans women were still sent to male prisons. They weren't allowed to change their name. They weren't, given effective access to, hormone replacement therapy and things like that. So the contradiction I felt was really stark, and I felt really morally compromised at times, having to kind of basically sing for my supper. There's a chapter in this book that's called "Sing for Your Supper," which I pretty much spent 2 years doing, trying to get money for this service and sort of begging to government for money, and like being a good trans along the way. So that did make me pretty angry, and I definitely talk about that in the book. Another thing that I just feel like there's been so many protests and political developments that have not been good in Australia and in Melbourne in particular. One of them that I cover in the book is an anti-African, anti-immigration rally that happened in St Kilda, when I was working at the LGBTIQ legal service. And it was the first time that I'd seen neo-Nazis openly mobilizing, in an urban area in Melbourne. And unfortunately, it's become like rather commonplace now. But that was the first time I saw that. So me and, my queer friends attended that rally and almost got sort of beaten up by Nazis, which, felt like really an extreme moment at the time. But as we've seen, yeah, neo Nazis have become even more sort of targeted in their opposition to trans and gender diverse rights in particular. So we've had a lot of run-ins over the years. I also cover in my book the trans exclusionary radical feminist movement, which is kind of situated at Melbourne Uni. So there's a chapter in there that talks about a panel discussion about, the relationship between academic freedom and hate speech, and, to what extent is it reasonable for us to have to sort of coexist with people that denigrate trans and gender diverse experience in the name of academic freedom? So yeah, I discussed that in the book as well. And it was really important to me to capture that political debate, because it was one that made me feel really awkward, because I sort of come, I guess, from like a lesbian feminist background, and like a lot of the people who are really involved in sort of turf spaces here in Nam anyway, kind of like look and sound a lot like the way that I used to. And like we're sort of a similar age and similar demographic. And it just feels really, really bizarre that we've ended up in this sort of hostile oppositional space. And that's something that I wanted to kind of explore, and explore some of the kind of minor feelings of sadness and pain around being targeted by, a group that you would sort of otherwise identify with. So yeah, I did mention this wasn't going to be a very academic presentation, but I did want to mention one book that had a really big influence on me in writing Detachable Penis, and that was Side Effects on Being Trans and Feeling Bad by Hill Malatino. In that book, they talk about how bad feelings of trans experience can inform trans survival and flourishing. And yeah, I hadn't read a book like it before, and I really connected with the idea that, you shouldn't always have to kind of pretend that everything's great and that things are fabulous, like there's this real sort of camp, I guess, tradition of part of the LGBTIQA plus movement, where we all kind of like dress up and feel fabulous and, do this kind of performative thing. And I'm certainly not against it, but like I've spent my entire life, trying to avoid having to dress up and like, think about my appearance. My life has sort of been in flight from that. So, yeah, it's something that I don't really connect with. And, sort of like when I was growing up, like Garfield was my hero, so those sort of like characters in cartoons and Eeyore and things like that, they're the kind of characters that I've always connected with. So the idea of being able to present myself on the page as somebody who, is depressed a lot of the time, isn't going super well, is dealing with um, my hormonal and psychological landscape changing and feeling really angry a lot of the time and not knowing how to manage that because I wasn't used to it. Um, was something that felt really important to put on the page. So I hope that I'd created a book that kind of explores rage and anger in a way that, you know, doesn't necessarily have to be positive, just is what it is. And I hope that it's, yeah, a more honest depiction. And, in releasing the book, it came out back in May now. I've had people say that they've really connected with some parts of the books and some parts of the book they're like, I don't think that at all. And I really love that. And I guess like every book is a invitation to the reader to, present their own particular worldview and experience of life. And yeah, if my book does anything, I hope that it sparks more, writing, whether it be life writing like my book or, fiction or whatever, some other genre yet to be created, that explores different aspects of LGBTIQA plus life. I would be very grateful for it because, I think that there's real space there, after kind of like Tori Peters' book, went sort of into the stratosphere in terms of its popularity. Detransition Baby, I feel like there's more space now for writing kind of more unique, subtle, weird, off the wall kind of experiences of trans life. So I hope to read more of it. And that's it from me. I'll be in the Slack. So, yeah, happy to look at questions and stuff. And look forward to hearing the rest of your presentations.